Welcome class. Today I'd like to discuss about our inner landscape, the zone 00. I find it to be one of the most important zones because although we can learn about topography and learn about the patterns in nature and understand the outer world, so to speak, if we're not really in touch with our inner world, with who we are, with how we're showing up with life, with the way that we think, and how our thoughts become things, and how those things can actually inhibit us or perpetuate us to move forward. What I want to say about this zone 00 is that this inner ecology, this inner environment, is that if we start thinking with a mentality that is about integrating rather than segregating, or what I like to say is moving from the ideas of the mind that is about separation and scarcity to a form of more integrative and abundance way of living. As you move through life, consider the feelings of life, not just the thinking of life. How do I feel? What will help me make life feel like something that's supportive, something that's more connected? And so what I found is that a lot of students, I have hundreds of students, right, that have been through courses and classes with me. And what I found is that if they really believe that they can do it, that they can live a more empowered and impactful life within themselves and with others, I see that there's actually more action taking place. They're actually actively going out there and doing something about it. And yeah, they find pitfalls and they may feel some pain or some hurt or some ideas of failure, but there's no failure. There's just opportunities for learning, opportunities for growth. And it's a good thing. And so if we can get beyond this initial phase or fear of like, oh, I might do something wrong, it's going to give us that chance to become better, become more stewards of and with the earth, to become more connectors, people who are getting out there and helping community evolve more. And we're going to feel good about ourselves. We're going to start feeling good about what we choose. It is quite natural for us to look at the outer landscape and say, wow, look at the beauty, or look at the ways that it can be improved, or just look at its natural living and the way it grows and say, hey, this is nice, I like this. What about that inner landscape? And so this class, this zone 00, is about that inner landscape, right? That inner environment. How are we nurturing that landscape? How are we applying the principles of permaculture design into, say, all the various ways that we can grow? And so I want you to grow and explore your inner ecology with us in this class today. And take effort at not judging yourself too much. Just seeing where you are, seeing what's happening in your emotional status, in your relationships. The beauty of the inner landscape, that's zone 00 in this class today, is that no matter how you're growing, we can find beauty. We can find sustenance and maintain a space of homeostasis, right? Don't judge yourself and start being hard on yourself if you start to go through this class and realize like, wow, I have a lot more to grow. I can think much more abundantly. Really feel the inspiration that this class is here for you to be able to not just think about or do things on the landscape, but actually be about, right? Like living permaculture, that you are thinking and living as the principles in your life. And what you will see is that you'll take action more, right? There'll be more of an actual expression of permaculture in your life because you're living it, you're being it. And so let's go on this journey together on learning what Lobi is teaching us about the 7 different ways of thinking. Abundance thinking, living in gratitude, living in celebration, living a life where you have the belief that there's more than enough. And also not just more than enough things, or more than enough food, or more than enough water, but also more than enough to give to you, right? So having a sense of self-appreciation. Solutions thinking. We can focus on the mountain of obstacles in front of us, or we can focus on the path, the journey around it, and find ways to find the beauty and the joy in that, to know that there is a solution to every problem. So having a frame of mind that is leaning towards feeling inherently that there is a solution in every problem is going to give us that optimism that we choose to live as a permaculturist. Systems thinking, oh, what a great one. Opening up to energy flow rather than control, right? Looking at the emergence of things, seeing how 1 + 1 is not 2, but actually 3, because you have the two elements plus the synergy and the connection between the two. So thinking in systems is like thinking about love and how we are connected and come together, and then using that as the resource to move forward, to know that Gaia, this idea that the whole earth is one, will help us become more connected and more synergized in our transition to a permaculture future. Thinking like nature, discovering that we are mimicking nature, like biomimicry. Think of the heart, that the heart beats just in the same way that waves come and ebb and flow on the shoreline. We are, in a sense, a part of nature and within nature. And if we could start thinking like nature, we could start harmonizing with our own health and start tapping into the innate intelligence of nature. Cooperative thinking. This is where we move from being in a space of having power over to having power with. Moving to co-creation. Learning to drop the blame and then start having compassion and being humble enough to be willing to really take the steps to creating a global family. Thinking for the future. So consider your lifetime and beyond, right? Like we're almost developing for like 7 generations or more. And so in each and every step, if we are developing the vision of our future and the future of our next generation, we're going to enable ourselves to grow beyond this physical form, right? So yes, we want to love ourselves and grow, but we also want to love ourselves through the larger self. And finally, moving from thinking to doing, right? And not just doing and getting out there senselessly, but actually balancing your doing with your being. So still choosing to see that you can be the change that you wish to see, but more than that, that you can be somebody who's doing right livelihood, who's living on purpose and out there making a difference. So as you begin to cultivate your inner world, I invite you to take a listen to Starhawk, who's written several books and has some documentaries all about how we begin to interrelate with each other. Take a look.
What brings me the most joy is plain and simple joy. That's why I got into permaculture, is because permaculture is all about connections. And if you think about the last time that you had a connection of any kind, most likely it'll bring a smile to your face, regardless of whether it was a connection with your relative or your partner or a child or an animal or a plant or yourself. Connection brings us joy, and that's one of the primary permaculture principles, is to look at where connections are and to help build them and create more of them. And that really, when I made that connection, it just was like, oh, of course, this is, so now let's look at the human connections, because you can see how important they are in the permaculture and the land-based systems, so let's put them in the social-based systems as well.
Hi, I'm Starhawk. I am an author, an activist, permaculture designer, and teacher. I did my PDC in 1997, and I've been teaching ever since, I guess, 2001 or so, for about 17 years. So I run a program called Earth Activist Training, where we teach permaculture design courses that have a grounding in spirit and a focus on organizing and activism. In permaculture, we have 3 core ethics: care for the earth, care for the people, and what I like to think of the third one as being care for the future. And we focus a lot in our teaching on the care for the earth, but the care for the people is also a really vitally important aspect, because if you don't take care of the people, you're not going to be able to take care of the earth. It's the people who actually implement the earth care. I've seen a lot of different permaculture groups and other kinds of groups, not just permaculture, but other kinds of activist groups, spiritual groups, friendship groups, feminist groups, and all of them seem to really struggle deeply with the question of how do we deal with conflict? How do we actually create groups and structures that make it more likely that people will get along with one another? I came to permaculture out of many decades of working in earth-based spirituality and feminist spirituality movements, and I originally started writing about the goddess, the ancient goddesses and the ancient traditions and nature-based traditions that come from Europe and the Middle East. So I'd spent many decades teaching people how to meditate, how to do ritual and ceremony and create that and build community around it. Coming into the permaculture world, I feel like there's a deep hunger among the people that come to our courses for some way to connect with each other in a way that actually addresses those big questions we all wrestle with. Like, what is life for? And what happens after we die? And why are we here? What's my personal mission in this life, and how do I find it? And where do I find the strength and the allies and the courage to do the things that I want to do and take the risks that I want to take? So I feel that that is all an important aspect of teaching permaculture. Because again, dealing with the vegetables, that's the easy part. Dealing with the people is always the challenging part, and the most challenging person you can ever deal with is generally yourself. But if we have to commit to that work of doing that work on ourselves, looking at our own inner hidden places and our own scary places, and being willing to face those parts of ourselves that maybe aren't so attractive and pretty, and work through them. Because if we do that, then we don't have to project that out onto somebody else. And then we come from a much clearer space ourselves when it comes to forming relationships with others.
Again, the production of food and medicine and that which we consume, but then it's also the gardens and food forests sit in the context of a social experiment and a social enterprise. And people like to gather, and so this is the stage, and it's a place where we have classes and events, and there's a thing called the Chautauqua. It's a wonderful news and reviews, clown act, music, show, performance, theater space. Part of cultural and transference of culture is arts and music and theater and storytelling and poetry, and that's as permacultural as an edible food forest. And so this is a wonderful handmade stage that can be converted into a full production theater with spots and faders and sound systems and amplification, and seats 200 people in a full production. And then we also have another outdoor classroom, because we do live in a place where the climate is often so lovely that we want to be outside 9 or 10 months out of the year. So this pavilion gets set up as an outdoor classroom pretty frequently.